Welcome to GovCon Unscripted, where we dive into the unfiltered stories and strategies from all around the world of government contracting. Join host Chelsea Roberts as she explores how to navigate, thrive, and win in this complex but lucrative industry.
All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to GovCon Unscripted. I'm your host, Chelsea Roberts, CEO of Collaborative Compositions. And today I've got with us guest, friend, and colleague, Art Trevethan. Art, who are you and what do you do?
Sure. My name is Art Trevethan. I'm a serial entrepreneur. And I'm very specific, as I've told you before. I never actually wore the uniform, but as a part of my career, I was tapped on to become the entrepreneur in residence for Army Futures Command, and that served in Army Applications Lab. I did that for about 3 years, and it was an enlightening experience having come from the civilian side, right? I was the kid who had the little red wagon in the garden plot and started my entrepreneurial journey selling vegetables, walking up and down the street, cutting lawns, those kind of things that us Gen Xers have as a part of our experience growing up. You have to work. And that eventually led to a bunch of different industries, a number of different startups. And in that case, I had sold into the federal government in various areas and had a distinct opinion about the process. And then I got to go and work. And I'll tell you what, the grass is brown on both sides of the fence. So it is not the fault of the federal government. It's not the fault of the companies. It's the system and some misunderstandings between them. When I left that federal service, there were some specific reasons to leave, but I went and I worked for consultancy for about a year. And it really didn't align with some of my thoughts as far as what we should be doing. So in February of this past year, I left and went out, hung out my shingle, and I work with the companies who actually want to solve the problems to help them understand the workflow, the way they're going to work through. And I do this not only for the companies, I do advise for some venture groups as law firms, and then I still maintain strong relationships with the laboratories and the acquisition factors as a helpful resource.
Wow, that's quite a bit. Tell us what you knew about Army Applications Lab or about Army in general, about Army contracting, about the whole process of working with the Army before you joined with the Applications Lab.
I won't curse, but it was a crap show. That's what I knew about it, right? Because I had been involved in responses and discussions around technology that we were told that was wanted. And then, like at the last moment, a colonel would be like, oh, there was originally federal money used in the development of this, so we already own it. So we're just going to take your stuff and we're going to give it to a big. We're going to make sure that we've got those status behind it. And it felt very predatory. I also had situations where, for example, working with HHS, Health and Human Services, where we had a product that they wanted. It was well designed. After two to 3 years of having submitted this and going through some of the PALM cycle, when it finally got approved, the project got canceled. And the reason it got canceled was they had been very specific in their designation of the equipment they were going to buy alongside of our software. And let's just say HP didn't make that model of computer anymore, and it was unobtainable. So instead of writing the solicit or the requisition in for we need a computer that can run this, they had a specific model number on the computer they were going to acquire, which was no longer available. So there are the process has to take time in order to be good stewards of taxpayer money.
Sure.
However, there are certain technology moves at such a rapid rate, whether you're talking hardware, software, thought process, what have you, that in those requisitions, in those requests for equipment, how often does somebody like HP cycle their model numbers? How often do they upgrade? And I'll say the same thing applies for software as well, because when I first started working with the federal government, they didn't know what software as a service was. We just buy software. And then so they can contact you and say, hey, we're having this particular problem. You actually can't fix it because you're not certified to be on the system with the new version number, with a bug fix or otherwise. So the entirety of the acquisition system was originally designed to buy bombs, bullets, boots, and beans. We're going to feed them, we're going to equip them, and we're going to give them the tools. The tools of war, the tools of sustainment have changed from the last 25, 30 years.
Sure.
Those tools are no longer just physical goods. Those tools, the tools of conflict are software. The tools of conflict are learning methods. And we're no longer just throwing mini balls and muskets and wool coats at guys who are marching across fields in Gettysburg. We are providing systems that allow for rapid decision making and kinetic as well, but they are no longer the staid elements of throw munitions downrange.
Right. And that's absolutely true. Things are changing faster than ever before, and the acquisition processes and the whole acquisition ecosystem is not quite keeping up. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that companies encounter, is that they've got something and the government just has no clue, A, what it is, or B, how to buy it, even if they do need it. So what are some of the lessons that you took from your time at the applications lab? Some of the biggest key takeaways?
Yeah, one of probably the biggest lesson is having been involved in it as somebody who was providing product and service on one end, coming in as a vendor. What I saw was a system that didn't know how to buy what I was providing, and that had an aggressive approach to it because they knew they needed to do something. Before I was involved in the Army, I didn't necessarily recognize the partnership in the fight. Now, from the other side, working for the Army, it was, hey, I'm a customer. And quite frankly, your job as a small business is to understand, or even as a large business, small or large, right? Your job is to understand me as a customer so that you are providing to me what I need. And I will say that extends well beyond just the thing that you're selling. It is the thing that you're selling. It is the method for deployment. It is the how can we classify this? The creativity as far as being able to work with the client. Many people from the commercial market have a defined way that they do business. I sell this on my website. You click a button, you get it for $19.99. The DoD doesn't really have the power to do that. So there's flexibility on both sides of the fence, and there's a misunderstanding of each other that's endemic to a system that was designed a long time ago. And quite frankly, there's rules for how acquisitions takes place. Those rules for how something comes in are written in fraud, waste, and abuse, and they're written in blood, right? It is because somebody did something wrong or somebody got killed that these rules exist. So it's important that they be there. It takes a degree of creativity, and I'll point out a case here in just a second, to understand how we acquire something. So if you look at what everybody knows today, drones on the battlefield, little things zipping around, flying, destroying forces in Ukraine. When drones originally came out, yeah, they were much more primitive, but the DoD didn't think they were ever going to be a part of warfare. It's a nice little toy. The other thing that probably reinforced that, there are codes for everything that gets purchased. There's not a code for drones.
That is true.
So taking on the role of the acquisitions professional, how do I buy something that there is no NAICS code for? Now, if you go back and you look at it historically and you look at the budget spend, there were some people who were being creative. Drones, when they were originally being purchased, were classified as targets. That was a creative acquisitions professional doing what they needed to do to get it in there. Now, myself as a drone company, I might have not have liked being classified as a target. I'm like, this is a reusable thing, and I take offense at being something that you're just going to blow up. It's not that they were going to do that, but it was the code under which they could easily place something. It could actually proceed through the system. And there are rules about how you buy targets. Now, some of that has changed and evolved. There are now classifications for drones. We have PMO drone with PMO Aviation, who has a drone subclassification. And so these things are coming to exist. But when you try and turn a boat, right, there's a big difference in the turning radius between a speedboat and a battleship.
Oh.
And it takes miles to turn an aircraft carrier. And we're talking about something that's at that scale. We have to, as vendors, be observant of the process and understand the process and take not as much time as we took to develop our product, but the small, medium, large provider of solutions needs to have a deep understanding of the acquisitions process. And I will tell you what, that's not just go out and hire somebody who was in uniform. It's hire the right person who was in uniform, because it's a rare skill. And that skill, that knowledge can be the difference between whether you actually get into a program or not. And honestly, that's a lot of why my company exists. That's why your company exists, is having that understanding of what that process looks like.
And it varies. It varies for all sorts of different types of procurements, all sorts of different types of solutions, whether they're hardware, software, services combined. There's always something different. And the bias, the internal bias that you've got within all of the different various government entities for procuring a certain way or for buying a certain thing in a certain way, it all has to be understood and overcome in a lot of cases.
And it's not just about, okay, there's a different process in Army, Navy, Air Force.
Sure.
They follow the same general rules, but they will have their biases. But then you also throw into that the people who are in the programs, by the nature of wearing the uniform, are going to change jobs every 2 to 3 years. Right. So the person who you've built a relationship with or otherwise is most likely going to be moving on. Being flexible in who you're working with. It's kind of like a reorg in corporate speak.
Right.
So your champion may move on. The other thing that happens in this country, every 2 years, we replace a certain portion of Congress, and every 4 years, we replace the person in charge. Those biases also flow into the process. So understanding as a vendor that you're entering into a system that, while it is staid and old-fashioned and long-term, is always under a personality shift.
Yes.
And those personalities are actually important. So building relationships, not just with the guy that you're working with, but the person who may be coming in to take over that, building broad networks of relationship and understanding is key critical to long-term success.
Absolutely. Having a broad and deep network is absolutely something that is mission critical, even for the folks that are in their office doing it. They have networks that they build and maintain across all of their different positions that allow them to navigate these sort of treacherous government acquisition waters just a little bit easier and a little bit safely, and a little bit more safely. So, what types of things, when you transitioned out of your role and working with the federal government, did you find were challenging?
So challenging in the aspect of how you understand how you work with the government. You can choose to be a vendor. And that's part of the reason I left the previous company is they were interested in being a vendor to the government. And it's a great place to be. There's nothing wrong with that. That wasn't in my ballywick because I wanted to train and advise companies on how they work with the government as opposed to being one of those companies on how they work with the government, because there's enough people going out there and providing training courses and otherwise to the government itself. And quite frankly, it's the government's responsibility to make sure that their acquisitions professionals and innovation professionals are appropriately trained. And coming in from the outside, most companies, you have to spend a lot of time developing a product,
Right.
and developing a sales model. And corporations and private industry has certain ways that they do business, and then the government has a way that it does business.
Right.
And quite frankly, you probably have to, if you're going to be in this dual use world, you have to know both. And you have to have enough humility to be able to say, okay, I don't really know what I'm doing in this space. In the corporate world, you can go out and you can be like, hey, I'm building an AI product. That doesn't work in the DoD. You have to be solving a problem. I would somewhat argue you should probably be doing that in corporate as well. Just be a problem solver instead of a esoteric development methodology. And that's the same for hardware, software, or anything else. I just use AI as an example, because I'm sure you also encounter this where I just want to throttle the next person who says I'm an AI company. But be focused on the problem that the warfighter has. And that's one of the skills that I tend to bring, and that was hard for me to communicate when I came out, because I have to take a DoD-centric problem solving capability that I knew that I had and translate that into something that the solvers would see. The other problem, quite frankly, in this space of advisors and consultants that you and I live in, there's a number of snake oil salesmen. So you have to get over this, are you another snake oil salesman, or are you a person who can actually open the doors, build the strategy, and develop something that helps that company do what they were ultimately trying to do, which is to serve the country?
And that one of probably the biggest challenges that I see is companies that have been burned previously by having hired those carnival barkers, those snake oil salesmen, the folks that, come in and make gigantic promises and then deliver ultimately little to no return. And companies have to ultimately get over that hump and realize that, yes, while they are out there, you still ultimately need to be efficient, and you still need to be reliant on resources that are reliable, that are dependable, that have that level of knowledge, and they have the skills and the ability to bring you to the next step of your government contracting.
And I would add that they have enough integrity to tell you the thing that you don't want to hear.
Absolutely.
There are plenty of people out there who tell you, hey, I'll get you a contract in 3 months. Run the other direction as quickly as you can. And in a previous discussion I've laid out, I've been involved in scouting for most of my life. And there's a statement that we use from leadership that is, don't prepare the path for the scout, prepare the scout for the path. And if we apply this to this exact GovCon type of way, I can make introductions questions. I can grade your solution and I can help you get to the right place. But ultimately, you have to walk the path yourself. So I can't make a acquisition decision for the federal government. I can introduce you to the people who do. I do not believe that I can write your RFP, your proposal for the government, because that is your technology. You have an intimate knowledge of it, and you should write it. I'll grade it. I'll take a big red crayon and go through and circle stuff and say,
Sure.
Or otherwise. But your scientists, your subject matter experts are going to have a level of expertise and that goes so far beyond. So I will assist you in doing that and help you build a plan for what the next 3, 5, 7 years looks like. I am not going to promise you that I can get you in front of someone within 3 months, that I can get you a contract in 3 months, because the reality of the situation is any magic dust that I throw at it doesn't alakazam turn it into a we're just buying. It turns it into a, okay, we'll evaluate. We need to understand, how does this apply to the warfighter, costs associated. There are so many things in that regulatory environment that are actually the things that you need to know, that are hard-won experience in terms of what you do and what I do going down this road.
Absolutely. And that, if we'll double tap on that, if anybody tells you that they will get you a contract or get you in front of the right person in any short period of time, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, be very suspicious and be absolutely on your toes with them, because that's ultimately, those promises often, more often than not, go unfulfilled. And when they are fulfilled, there's almost always something not quite nefarious but behind them. Something's a little off there. And those are always words of caution to live by. Make sure that you're vetting the resources that you're working with. So tell us a little bit about some of the successes that you've had since you've left working with the federal government.
Sure. Successes in this time frame, I've been able to put on several clients. I have clients who have been accepted into some of the X-Tech programs. Now, those are small dollar, but it's first step down the road is going down that particular road. Also have a client who was accepted in on an OT for the Army, and been able to build some strong relationships for my clients that will lead to double up on something. I said, this process does take time. There's no magic wand. I've also convinced, and what I consider to be a success is clients who are willing to walk away from the SBIR system.
Yes.
Because it's a great educational platform for people to learn how you work with the DoD. However, it's DoD light, right? There are certain requirements that are not there. There are certain merit badges like your CMMC or those types of things that are not required to participate in that RDT&E research, development, test, and evaluation. But companies tend to get hooked on it because it becomes a repeatable process. I can get anywhere between 25,000, 150,000 on phase one. I can get $2 million on a phase two. And to me individually, $2 million, that's great money, right?
Sure.
It's pocket lint. It's not actually enough to run your company long term.
Exactly.
And it's not recurring revenue.
Exactly.
So companies get hooked into this hamster wheel of, I'm just going to keep on applying for SBIRs because I can get upwards between a 1 and a 2. I can get between $2.5 million.
Right.
That has led to some, the intent of the program is great. We need to do the research. We need to do those things. So the program is important. And it's not the companies, I believe, go in with the intention of gaming the system, but the system allows itself to be gamed. And that's a stuck point. That's not a real contract with the DoD. And quite frankly, your stuff, your life-saving elements, your life-protecting elements are not actually getting to do the job that you designed them for, because it's in a research methodology.
Right.
And we're not going out and issuing your stuff to 10th Mountain. We're not going out and issuing your stuff to some other particular unit who has a need, but
Sure.
they never get access because you're stuck in this cycle where you don't actually have the approvals to be equipment. You don't actually have the authority for your thing that detects every bomb and blows it out of the air. It can't go on the government computer because you haven't gone through the steps. So
Right.
as much as you may call your company a success because you made $2.5 million, you've done that multiple times.
Sure.
You don't get to grow into where you actually have an effect until you cross over to the acquisition side, which means you do have to go through all those things that were taken out of the RDT&E, the SBIR, the SITR
Right.
kind of process, and make it available generally. I do count that as success in educating some of my customers about this. And this is going to be a little bit of a slog. It's something we're going to do. And we need to find ways of supporting the industry. Another success is, quite frankly, talking to a customer about, you need money to run your business. And the thing that you're making, while yes, I do see it as valuable to the DoD, there's a quicker and stronger path to money in going after the commercial market. This is not to say that the DoD doesn't need the thing, but if you can't survive the process, your thing never gets there. So the structure of the company, some companies can be DoD first. Some companies can be focused on that with a rapid functionality. They usually start out with a whole lot of money. It's kind of like, how do you make $1 billion in the DoD? You start out with $3 billion of investment. It takes time to get there. And if buying that time, sometimes, yes, that can come from RDT&E monies, that can come from SBIR, SITR, grants, OTs, what have you. But if you want to have long-term effect and establish your company for the future, at some point, you need to turn away from those funds and say, how am I going to fund this company? And if you can sell 1 million of your things into the sports market, into the corporate market or otherwise, that funding coming in allows you to perform the R&D and to pack up your lunch bag to feed you while you're going through the DoD process.
Absolutely. I would say I absolutely consider any company that has made it successfully out of the SBIR and STTR program, that is absolutely a success. And that is something to be absolutely proud of. Those are programs that have a tendency of essentially trapping companies within that sort of cycle of quarterly releases and ultimately not enough money to continue to run the company on, especially if you miss one of those quarters and not being awarded on one of those subjects or topics that you've submitted on. So that's absolutely something to be mindful of and for companies to be aware of. Is while it seems, and it's touted as America's Seed Fund, so it does seem it would be a great opportunity to get involved, to get to engage with government. You're ultimately not engaging with your ultimate end customers by way of that program. It tends to typically be somewhat separated and somewhat external from the ultimate market that you belong in as a company, that your service product system belongs in with the government.
It's a great way to learn about the system and perhaps put some research into something. But one of the things that's very interesting about the federal government is your user is not your buyer. They are specifically bifurcated so that the user and everybody, honestly, if you got a heart about this, you're all about the warfighter. You're all about that person. It's a mantra that we all have. Yes, 100% concerned about the warfighter. They don't make the decision on what gets bought.
Correct.
They don't have the money. They don't have the contracting ability. They don't have the decision-making authority to say, that's the thing I want. They
Right.
tell somebody that, it gets interpreted. And sometimes I joke, it's a giant game of telephone, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where by the time it gets to the requirement writer, to the person who's in acquisitions, the RFP writer, what have you, it may have altered. And that's not always a bad thing, because sometimes they're taking into account, okay, this guy says he needs this, guy says he needs this, let's mush those together, right? And sometimes the point is the plot is lost. I'll absolutely point out that as a foible of the system.
Yeah.
But they don't have the ability, Sergeant Snuffy or General whatever can't pull out a checkbook and buy your thing. They are an influencer, yes, but that influence only goes so far, because you have to deal with the acquisition side of the house, which has a different set of priorities and profiles to someone who is in the field, carrying the weight and putting their lives in danger.
Absolutely. And recognizing that system is rather disconnected, and you will never have just one single person involved in any buying decision is core to understanding the market and how it works. Tell us what some of your biggest takeaways are for other folks that are transitioning out of service, military service, federal employment. What do you want them to know?
I want them to know that if you're going, there's a first decision. What do you want to do? You absolutely have transferable skills. So what drives your passion as far as finding your next opportunity to put money on the table, pay your mortgage, what have you? And don't feel like you have to stay in this field, because this is, again, a difficult field to be in. It's filled with ups and downs. Any contract can be canceled. It happens. So you have to deal with those disappointments as well as the victories. And if you're going to survive in this industry, you have to decide, do you want to take the entrepreneurial path, or do you want to go down the working for a big company path? I know in my personality, working for a big company is not in the cards for me. Simply get really frustrated with big companies. But there are people who do very well working for, we sometimes refer to them as the bandits, the Booz Allens, those kind of companies. The US government doesn't survive without those companies. They need somebody to fill that role.
Absolutely.
We may joke about it, we may say things, but a small company can't go out and build a Joint Strike Fighter. You need Lockheed Martin, you need Boeing, and they fulfill an absolutely important role. So do you see yourself going into that kind of role, or leaving DoD altogether? There's plenty of businesses out there, but taking the time to write down your individual skills and then map them to other industries, other areas. And quite frankly, if you do have the entrepreneurial bent and you're like, I wish I had this thing all the time that I was in the DoD, and let's say they were a war fighter, they said, I wanted this in the field, or if they were administrative or otherwise, and they're like, I wish I had this program, you can go out and build that thing. But if you didn't come from the acquisition side of the house, you've got an education ahead of you, and you need to take and build into your plan the time to learn about those parts of the DoD or of the federal government that you didn't have experience in. Just because you were a warfighter doesn't mean you know how those parts work. And I would say the same for corporate America. If you're going to go out and join corporate America, take your time to do the research and understand what you want your next step to be. There are absolutely fulfilling careers, both inside and outside the support of the federal government. It is much easier on the hard day, because everybody's got hard days. It's much easier on the hard days if it's somewhere that your heart lies.
Sure. Absolutely. And those are great takeaways for folks. Find your passion and make sure that you pursue that instead of putting yourself into sort of the expected hole that you feel like you're designed or designated to fit in. Ultimately, everyone has the opportunity to go after doing what they love. And if you don't find joy in what you do, it tends to be a bit of a soul sucker for
Yeah.
folks. So, Art, if folks want to get a hold of you, if they want to know more about what you
Sure.
do, about how they can get involved with you, about how they can do what you do, how can they get a hold of you?
And I'm happy to have all those conversations. You can look me up on LinkedIn, Art Trevethan. I'm the only one. Do a search on the mustache. But I'm available at artstrat, ARTSTRAT.co, or my website is artstrat.co. I do tend to show up at a lot of events coming up here. I am emceeing the event at Fed Supernova in Austin.
Oh, very cool.
Week and a half. I'm emceeing the track on the industrial base, and you can ask around. And I would recommend that people ask around about any consultant before you engage them, because we can all tell a great story, right?
Sure.
But find out who are the right people. Again, you can email me. We'll set up a meeting. We'll have a half-hour conversation. You can reach out to me through LinkedIn, email, what have you. I'm on Signal too, of course, although I'm not in the conversation with OSD. So, I stay in the safe parts of Signal.
To be fair.
Yes. But I do try to make myself as available as possible.
That's fantastic. This has been an amazing conversation full of insights, challenges, takeaways, and lessons learned. And I can't thank you enough for being willing to share all of that with our audience.
Thank you, Chelsea. It's good to have these conversations just from the way that we approach things. And I really appreciate the things that you do as well.
Absolutely. Likewise, you're a valuable member of our community, and we absolutely appreciate it. We'll have to get you back on the show to talk more about what you've been doing, what you're doing now, and ultimately some of the more successes that you've had over this past couple of years. And until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day, Art.
You too. Thank you, Chelsea.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of GovCon Unscripted with your host, Chelsea Roberts. Do you have a GovCon story or need guidance in government contracting? Connect with Chelsea on LinkedIn to be a guest on the show or to enhance your business strategy. Don't forget, your network is your net worth. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your growing GovCon community.